Will everyone please rise and face the flag and salute?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For those of you with the masks, if you want to take them off, it's your choice. We're social distancing. We have to do one or the other, but you can do masks if you feel better. Sunshine law, please.
Notice of this meeting was published in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act.
And there will be no new business tonight after 11 p.m. Have a roll call, please.
Mayor Gilmore,
Here.
Mr. McLaughlin,
Here.
Mrs. Kelly,
Here.
Mr. McKay,
Here.
Mr. Chakotay,
Here.
Mrs. Maggio,
Here.
Mrs. Tyndale,
Here.
Ms. Costco,
Here.
Mr. Profeifer,
Here.
Mr. Bradley,
Here.
Mr. Silk, absent, Mr. Murphy, and Mrs. Cuglio. I can never say her name right, she's going to shoot.
Do you have a quorum?
She didn't answer.
She said she was calling in.
Do we have a quorum?
Yes.
Okay. Items for business. I'm going to just jump to case 3, SC rather quickly. R&M development will be heard on June 2nd. So we will start with case A. Mr. Palente, we're going to have to stop meeting like this.
I have. I've been up here once ever and now twice in a month.
Sir,
Lucky.
raise your right hand, please.
Yes, sir.
You swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
May we help you, sir?
All right. I own 10 Maple Avenue, or 10 Maple Lane, Hainesport. I'm requesting a minor subdivision of that property. So I had purchased this property with intent to renovate it. I don't know if any of you have been by it, but it was in pretty bad shape initially. So I renovated it with the purpose to resell it. When I bought it, I realized it was 4 lots. Not realizing that when I bought it, but I said, you know what, I could subdivide these lots and then possibly build another house on that, if approved, the lot that would be subdivided. Right now, there's an existing house on lots 19 and 20. This is if approved, this lot would be conforming to Hainesport Township, I guess, regulations. It would be 100 by 150, and this house that's on there now doesn't meet the setback, though, because I guess the age of the house back then, the setback rules weren't in place. So it's 20.6 feet from the road, where Hainesport Township requires 30 feet. So I'm seeking a bulk variance for that, in addition to the minor subdivision. So if approved for the subdivision, lots 17 and 18 would then be a separate address, and that address now will, that lot would be 100 by 150, the same, which would be required by Hainesport Township, the minimal lot requirement to build. So I'm requesting a minor subdivision for lots 17, 18, 19, and 20 on block 18. So, and if approved, I have some pictures of a house that would be, I guess you would say, similar to other houses in that neighborhood. I had renovated a house right on Spruce, which is the next house over, so I'm very familiar with the neighborhood and, and then the houses that are, typical for that neighborhood.
All of the lots you own, that they are lot 18.01, is that correct?
Yes, yeah, the block 18, and then the lots are 17, 18, 19, and 20. And then the surveyor I had out, he split it up. I think everyone has a copy of that. If you don't have it, I have extra copies here to kind of, to show the outline of exactly where the, the 2 lots are. And if it was to be subdivided, exactly where the 2 lots would end up being.
Can I get a copy of that?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
So this is
Kathy's looking at it.
Maple here, and this is the one with the existing house, and then the vacant, where the vacant lot will be.
I'll take one.
This is Maple Lane,
So what, what?
house, we don't have it here,
So am I allowed
wants to subdivide this in 20
Yeah,
lots.
one here. So this is,
Mr.
So-
Ford,
this is 20, so what would this one be?
So this one is 18, 19 and 20, lot 19 and 20.
Okay,
And then this one, if the subdivision was approved, would be lots 18, or I'm sorry, 17 and 18. So there's 4 lots total.
Oh, okay, yes, up there, yes.
17,
Yeah,
So this- yeah.
10 Maple Avenue has 4 lots on that property.
Yeah,
so this
Right.
is one,
Right, so this
This
would
is
be,
one.
yeah, if the subdivision was approved, this would be one, and then this would be
okay, that
the
makes,
other lot.
that would make more
Right.
sense. Thank you.
okay, yep. So I see it.
This is with our package. I think everybody has this. We didn't get this other thing you passed in. Just so, I think I've got it figured out. You own all of this property.
Smaller.
And
Yes, sir.
It's lot 17, 18, 19, and 20. The house is on these 2 lots.
Yes, 19 and 20.
This is the house you're going to refurbish, and then you're going to build on the second.
17 and 18, yes.
Now, will those be in conformance?
Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry. This thing. I'm Italian, I talk with my hands. So, yeah, so I'm sorry, so the house that I build would be, is that the question, would be conforming to?
Yes.
Yeah, to the setbacks, yes.
All right.
And that's what I had made sure that when I, went to the surveyor and he subdivided it, first off, to make sure that Hainsport Township, it was within, the minimum requirement, and then to meet the setbacks also. So that way, I'm not wasting my time and your time up here asking for a subdivision that wouldn't meet the requirements anyway, so.
And then, just for the record, and to answer your question, I did go to the property, to see it. And I noticed that you did nice improvements.
Oh, thank you.
On the refurbished job. You're going to do more on that, understand?
Yeah. Believe it or not, it's actually under contract. Somebody liked it before I even finished it, so,
Well, good.
which is good. So, but thank you. It really turned out nice compared to what it was.
Yeah.
Any board questions, front row,
No,
back row? No. Public comment? Is anybody on?
There's 4 residents on it, there's 4 people on.
Anybody online have any comment, questions? If not, I will close public comment. And board, what's your pleasure?
I'll offer a motion to grant the application.
Okay,
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mrs. Tyndale?
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes,
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mr. Chakotchi?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
yes,
Ms. Costa?
Yes.
And Mr. Colpfeiffer?
Yes. Good luck.
There you go.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Tough town to deal with.
Yeah, thanks for not grilling me too much.
as a side, I've had requests for people wanting, the subdivision, the single flat story,
Okay.
rather than
Than a
two-story.
two-story?
Yeah,
Okay.
so if I knew of anybody, so I'll just pass that along.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
The next case is
Grant.
16-2B, Our Lady Queen of Peace. Attorney is Mr. Costa. For those of you that know the name but maybe not know the face to face, Mr. Costa was solicitor for the township for a good million years. He was on the township committee for 3 years. So how may we help you again, sir?
Well, good evening, Mr. Chairman and the board members. It's always a pleasure to return. It feels good being back, too, it really does. Anyway, today I'm here to proudly represent the Our Lady Queen of Peace Church, which is located right down the street from us, at the corner of Lumberton Road and Broad Street. And we're here in a nutshell to ask that the board approve the church to hold Mass, the sacrament of Mass, at its new parish hall, basically more than 2 times a year. You see, the old resolution from 2016 was signed at that time under circumstances such that the church was limited to celebrating Mass 2 times a year at the parish hall. That has proven somewhat impractical, as you'll hear from the witnesses. And hopefully we'll have a few number of witnesses, and I have to bring everybody up, but I suppose I should swear everybody in just in case. So I'm going to ask at this point in time that your solicitor swear in the witnesses. I would ask that Deacon Leo Zito stand up, Father Joseph Noche stand up, and everyone from the church stand up, because even though you may not testify, just in case. So if you just came here to show support for the church, stand up, please. Thank you. And also Mr. Miller, the planner, is standing up too. Okay, that's it. We can swear everybody in.
Are all these people going to testify?
No.
Whoever is going to testify, please raise your right hand.
Just in case, raise your right hand, please, just in case.
You swear or affirm that the testimony you give tonight will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I did.
Thank you.
Thank you for indulging me, everyone. Okay, at this point in time, I'm going to call the deacon of the church, Fred, all right, who's going to do a lot of talking because he's good at it.
Deacon, before you start, let me ask you, why, refresh my recollection, why was it that back in, what was it, 2016, 14 to 16,
right?
That we had the 2 per year limits? Refresh my recollection, if you can, or maybe Mr. Costa can.
That's certainly part of the testimony, sir. We're going to get right to that.
Can you hold that for just 1 second?
Do I need to recuse
Yeah,
myself?
you have to recuse, right?
Right.
Yeah, and you have to go. Sorry.
Yeah, I can sit in the audience.
Oh, yeah. Please.
Still got a quorum.
Just you want to make a note of it, that Mayor,
Do I need to sit out?
I think you should say.
We have to leave?
yes,
Yeah.
you are supposed to go out. Members of the township committee.
home, right? Is there anything after that?
Minutes.
Free pizza and beer, but
Correspondence?
Yes.
I can watch that
Couple
online.
of resolutions.
I'll hang around.
okay, thank you.
I got some work to do.
Let me shine my shoes tonight.
Thank you for coming up.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Costa, continue.
No problem at all. We've got enough people here to see. All right, Deacon Leo, first of all, I suppose I should identify yourself. Please, your name, your title, your position of the church.
I'm Deacon Leo Zito, a pastoral associate at Our Lady Queen of Peace Church,
How long have you been there, sir?
since 1996.
Okay. All right, you just heard mentioned that beginning in 2014, several years ago,
Sure.
the church did get approval from this board to build the parish hall
Sure.
across the street from your church.
Mhm.
And at that time, we had a resolution that said basically that the parish hall was only going to be used for the celebration of Mass, for overflows, I believe, on Christmas and Easter.
Sure.
You recall that resolution?
Yes.
Okay. And by the way, that resolution, correct me if I'm wrong, also allowed you to use the parish hall for other things besides the 2 days of Mass per year, such as some wedding activity, some Catholic education activity, right?
Yes. Kind of, yes, but that's when we had the extra building extension on it, and that got cut off for the education.
Well, in any event, I don't want to get back too much. Let's
Sure.
get right to the heart of the matter.
Sure.
Today, sir, the church wishes to use the parish hall for some masses more than twice a year. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. And in fact, you've been operating at the church, having masses every single weekend since December, when you've been giving, in this past December, when you were given temporary approval pending this meeting, right?
Yes, since December 24th.
Okay. And by the way, I should ask you, have you had any problems or complaints from December 24th to the present time, even though you're holding mass every single weekend?
No, not one. Not to us, not one.
And you're holding the mass every single weekend at the parish hall,
Yes, sir.
right? Okay. So let's get to the crux of the matter then, sir. Why does the church today want to have mass, celebrate mass on weekends especially, and not just 2 days of the year at the parish hall?
Sure. Well, since the coronavirus has come upon us all, there's a need for distancing, and there's a need to spread out a little more and be a community, practicing our faith. And we just feel it's been safer and more convenient to be in the parish hall, and that's the best way we can practice our faith. In the little church that we have, we love our little church, but it is small, and we can't accommodate our parishioners. So we would prefer, or we would hope, since we're not disturbing anybody, and we're just trying to be a good part of the community, to continue in the parish hall.
All right. And are you saying that social distancing is a factor, sir?
It's one of the factors, yes, but we would also like to use our parish hall for all the good things that serve the community and our parish at Our Lady Queen of Peace Church and in Hainesport.
I understand that you used to have certain activities in the basement of the old church, is that correct?
Correct.
And those activities included certain festivities like St. Patrick's Day, and go ahead, talk about it.
Any festivals we could have, any time community could come together, we would have it in our parish hall. But be it said that there's stairs there, and people couldn't get up and down the stairs, and a large part of our community...
Church, sir, right? You said...
Yes, in the church, in our church, a large part of our community couldn't go to the basement of our church, and therefore a lot more community can come out in the parish center, and we could accommodate the parishioners in a better way.
Is the church basement...
And safer.
Is the church basement handicap accessible?
No.
Okay, and that is one reason, again, that you want to have certain festivities and events at the parish hall instead,
Yes, it would help us out.
right? Now, the church, you said, is small. You have typical church pews, I understand, in that church?
Yes, sir.
All right. And in close quarters with each other, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's tight. It's a small, if you've ever been in our parish, our church, it's a small church, small country church.
All right. So basically then, sir, you're saying that, number one, you want to have more activities such as holding mass at the new facility for safety reasons,
Yes,
to make people feel more confident,
more comfortable, yes,
more comfortable coming there?
yes.
And your other events at the church besides the celebration of mass would include what?
First communion, confirmation, the sacraments of our church, and perhaps a repast after a funeral for those of, not everybody could afford to go to Colucci's, and not everybody could afford to have a wedding reception at the place across the street from our parish, that big hall, or some of these big halls. Some of the people don't have that much money, and if we could help them celebrate their marriage in a parish center, we would like to accommodate them too.
Let's talk about that, sir. You have already been approved, I understand, for a very large commercial kitchen at the parish hall, isn't that true?
Yes, sir.
This board already approved that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you're not going to advertise this facility for third-party groups or activities, are you?
No, sir.
Is the church facility available simply for parishioners?
Yes, sir.
All right. Is the church trying to make money on any type of banquet festivities?
No, sr.
Is anything charged at all if someone wants to use the room, such as Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, or something like that?
No, sir, if they wanted to make a donation, we would accept it, of course, but we're not charging them a fee.
Right. May I ask how many, since you've been there operating at that facility for the past 5 months almost? Having mass every weekend, right?
Yes, sir.
How many festival events have you had besides mass?
Well, we had a First Communion, we had a small reception for a wedding, and I think we had one repast. That's a funeral. After the funeral, people get together and grieve and share their love for the person who had passed away.
All right. And sir, does your church typically make available your facilities for community activities on an annual basis?
Yes, we have blood drives, we have food pantries, we collect clothes for people who need different, coats and shoes and things like that, and we're there for the community. We're there to help anybody in the community that we can.
And sir, presently I understand that you hold mass during the week at the old church, right?
Yes, sir.
And why is that?
Well, there's not a lot of people who come to the 9 o'clock mass. We average about 20 people, and we do love our little church, and when we could use it, we would like to use it. But on the weekends, it just is a lot easier for people to come in a little bigger setting and feel safer spread out.
All right, before I move on to other questions, does anyone else want to ask about why they want to celebrate mass at the parish hall?
Well, that's pretty clear. I mean, it's obvious. But let me go back to you, Mr. Costa. This question I asked before, refresh my recollection. Why did we limit the use of this to 2 occasions a year at the time?
I think what happened, and I wasn't there, I read the minutes and whatnot.
I was there and I can't remember. And I don't have the resolution in front of me, so I don't know.
I think what happened from the church standpoint is they didn't envision the serious need they would have for more space and safety at the time. And at that time, they thought that, well, we'll probably just have mass on spillover occasions. And the question came up, well, when are the spillover occasions? Christmas and Easter, right? That's when everybody and his grandmother comes. And so I think it came up that way, not planned, but that's the way it came out, and it was gotten the resolution. They're going to have mass, not only on Christmas and Easter. There may have been at that time also objectors, or at least people who showed up wondering if the lights would show up in their windows, maybe neighbors, all right? And I think what happened was, I know what happened, is that the engineers made it such that, as you give a testimony, you're going to present, but basically the lights, the overhead lights that they have at the church, in the parking lot, well, they're designed to come right down. They don't go across into people's houses, they come down. And the church built a berm in that particular area where across the street there are certain residents. And there are plantings there, trees and whatnot that are growing now as we speak. And all that is designed by the engineers and approved by the township engineers to give some cover and buffer and show that the lighting is not necessarily forever going to go through and bother the resident neighbors.
That and traffic flow was the memorable, those items and traffic flow were the memorable complaints or issues raised by neighbors.
Right, okay. And we do have the planner up here too, our planner, which you'll hear from. But it's based upon my reading of the papers, though, the traffic pattern is basically very similar to the existing traffic pattern that was there when it was just the church, because after all, they're right across the street from each other. So you're not going to see double the traffic. It's going to be the same amount of traffic coming in. It's just that, well, instead of parking on this side of the street, they park on that side of the street. So it's not like a lot of more traffic is going to come to town and come to that intersection. All right? So now, go ahead, Mr.
No, are you finished?
Yes.
Yes. I have a couple of questions. You mentioned that you were given approval
to have the masses between December 24th and today. Where did you get that approval?
If I may, the church appealed to the governing body, and the governing body was kind enough to grant, by way of resolution, authority to operate Mass anytime they wanted until this hearing could be heard, which was very nice.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, that's all. Going back to the recollection thing, picking up on Mr. McKay's question, back 4 years ago, the church held Mass in the church, and you allowed for overflow down below, occasionally. But it wasn't a whole, it wasn't like the priest wasn't down there, it was just audio.
Because I recall years ago, since I attended that church, years ago, they actually had Mass in one of the schools.
We had to use Hainsport School.
As a spillover, they go to the school.
Okay. But that was just audio, I guess, right?
No.
No, we'd have a priest go there too, and it wasn't very
Yeah.
conducive to practicing our faith at the school. It just wasn't the same.
All right. The only other thing, and maybe your planner's going to tell us or something with the traffic, because I have some questions about that, and also relative to the Mass is being said at your new facility,
At the center.
but there's not a comparable Mass at the church. It's just the one right over there.
On weekdays, we're at the small church, our church.
Yes, but
On the weekends, we're at the center.
Okay. But I'd like some information on traffic pattern, because I respectfully have to disagree with you that there's no difference, because there's a big difference with restrictions in terms of turning, plus people are parking at the new property rather than behind the church. So if we can just have somebody address that, I think that's what you were getting at, wasn't it, Mr. McKay?
Generally, yes.
Yeah.
Let's do that now, if I can. I may bring you back, Leo.
Sure.
Let's bring our planner forward. Come on
What's
down,
I have a question.
Mr. James Miller.
All right, of the,
When they're done with the traffic part.
Okay, this is James Miller, he's already been sworn in. Mr. Miller, may I inquire of the traffic pattern and significance of any changes? You've heard the questions, please respond.
Yes, and for the record,
voir dire, Mr.
I have to be
Oh, I'm
qualified.
sorry, sure, yeah, you were absolutely right, sorry.
That's why they put me up here. But no, I'm kidding, just go ahead.
Sir, I'm going to voir dire you. I never used that verb in my life, but I'm going to do it. Okay, state your full name, please.
Okay, my full name is James Miller, and my address is 222 Nicholson Drive, Morristown, New Jersey.
Just,
Shall I just rattle?
You
Yeah.
just go, you know how to do it.
Okay. I'm a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. I'm also certified by the American Institute of Certified Planners as a certified planner. And I've been qualified by this board as an expert on a number of occasions, including the prior hearing on this church. So I do have some recollection of the hearing. For example, I wanted to confirm what Mr. Costa said about the Easter and Christmas services. That wasn't a condition of the approval. That was when the church came in and said, we're going to continue to use the small church. We just want to be able to use the parish hall on Easter and Christmas because that's when we have the largest number of congregants come out. So it was that's how that became a condition of the variance. But it was something that the church proffered at the time of the hearing.
In other words, sir, it wasn't something that the church wanted to do necessarily. It wasn't planned, but it was basically
what they were doing.
Volunteered,
Yes.
that's what they were presently doing.
Yes. In terms of the traffic flow, I know there was a lot of testimony about the parking, the adequacy of the parking, and the fact that there would be parking both behind the chapel on Sunday and then overflow parking at the new facility. And subsequent to the original variance, there was a series of hearings on the site plan, and at that time, the parking on the parish hall property was reduced from 124 spaces to the current 108, and that was done to accommodate landscaping along the perimeter of the property, buffers to shield the lights in the parking lot from the adjoining homes and that sort of thing, and also to just provide a little more landscaping along the perimeter of the property. There were also conditions in the resolution, and I'm speaking from memory, but as I recall, prohibiting turns, left-hand turns out onto 537, and there was full movement on the, I'm blanking out on the cross street.
Lumberton Road?
Lumberton Road.
What did you say, full activity?
Pardon?
Did you say there was full activity on Lumberton?
Yes, as I recall, and then, but the only left-hand turns on the, or rather, right-hand turns coming out on the 537 onto Martin Highway.
If I may just correct that, Mr. Miller. In actuality, the church on Lumberton Road exit is only allowed to make a right turn, all right?
Okay.
That's the way it happened.
I had it backwards, but I knew there was some constraints on the access in and out of the parking lot. And there was some concerns about, you know, the volume of cars and what have you. But basically, I think that the volumes were consistent with what was historically there, because I don't think the church has really grown appreciably in the time since then. And so there was the same amount of people coming there. It's just a matter of how they were distributed, where they were parking, and I think when they use the parish hall for mass, obviously people are going to be more prone to park there until those spaces are occupied. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, I'm going to represent that ultimately the board granted on Lumberton Road a right out only,
Yeah.
all right? And the opposite on Martin Highway.
I know that because I was at the site a couple days ago and I saw the sign, didn't, you know, so I went out on Martin and just messed up.
Right. So at that time, the traffic pattern was analyzed by this board and your professionals, and that's what they determined to be the best alternative, right?
Yes. And I was not at the site plan meetings, but I did go over the resolutions, and that's...
Can you offer any testimony as to whether that traffic flow arrangement works today?
I will inquire of the pastor and the... Okay, while you're here, Jim, though, you may as well go up your testimony. All right? Unless, tell you what, Mr. McCall, you got it right to that. Can you stand by, sir?
Sure.
All right. Okay, Deacon, come on back. All right, let's address the question that was just posed. The question posed is the traffic pattern working presently? Are there any complaints, any problems?
Absolutely. I think the traffic pattern's working very well. People are coming in, people are going out. There's been no accidents. Everybody seems happy. Even, I'm going to tell you that the neighbors who were a little concerned, I've stopped by their houses and I've asked them, any complaints, anything going on, let me know. No, Deacon, not a complaint in the world. Everything is great. Do you like the building? Love the building. Thank you. So everybody seems to be happy. There's been no incidents.
Can I speak to that? How many masses, do you have any more masses or any less masses?
In fact, we're having less masses. We don't have a 12 o'clock mass right now. We have a 4:30 on Saturday evening, a 7:30 on Sunday, 9 and 10:30 Sunday morning. We're out of there by 11:30. They don't even know we're there,
Right.
the township.
I live at the other end of Lumberton Road, and I often come home that way because of where my church is.
Sure.
But there is really no difference.
Thank you.
Because a lot of parking was done in that lot
Yes,
before.
absolutely.
So you had people crossing Martin Highway, whereas if they're having the mass at the parish, they're basically not crossing Martin Highway, and there doesn't appear to be any more cars there. There might be, and you have your overflow parking, I would assume, behind your church.
Absolutely. In fact, what you said is absolutely correct. We've been parking there for like at least the last 15, 18 years, and they've been walking across the street, which is even a little tougher, but they've been doing it because of the parking. But it seems to work, like what you said.
Okay, while on the subject of the traffic pattern, and then, don't misunderstand, I'm not knocking anybody down, I just want to make sure everybody's got all the facts.
Sure.
On Martin Highway, directly in front of the existing church, I believe the county imposed the restrictions on there with the island, as if you will, that was painted on.
Sure.
And no left turn. If you're coming from this building, going down across Lumberton or Broad, you can't make a left turn into the church parking lot. You have to turn on Lumberton.
Yes, you would turn at the light.
Yeah, turn at the light.
Yes, sir.
But that's what I was talking about before. There has been a traffic.
And the reason that they don't want you to make a left going out on Marne is because when cars are backed up there, you can't see what's coming this way, so they said, no, it just makes sense. Yeah.
That's correct. It's a county road, the county.
No, they had, it wasn't here, they did.
Right.
Correct. You're right.
It just makes sense.
Yeah.
Has there been CCD since everything?
Yeah,
shut down?
we're doing it,
Virtual.
virtual, yes.
But, so you have not had it in the new parish?
No, ma'am.
yet. So when we're talking about the traffic and everything, I think that's one thing that we should take note of, that CCD has not been in person since the building has been completed. And so when we're saying people are turning, everything's been, the way it's supposed to be. But, just remember that could be a different story come the fall and you're going back, in person as well. I also have a couple other questions, if I may, before we go on. One of the things on here, it says that that the church serves thousands of residents in Hainesport Township. How many people attend?
That's my writing, by the way, is that.
Okay, well, I mean, it's something that we have those, so I just want to make sure our facts are, because it's written here, again, serving thousands of parishioners.
Okay, so at the weekend mass, at the highest mass or the most attended mass, we've had 107 people.
107?
Yeah, so we have 107, let's say at the 4:30, and maybe like 70 people at the 7:30, maybe 100 people at the 9, 108 at the 10:30.
Okay, and the original church, how many can it seat?
230,
230, okay. And then the new one can?
350.
350, okay. And then the other question I have is, I'm reading through here, it says in here about ways that you're serving the community. What have you done since the new building has opened that has served the community, where people have been coming in, or where there's stuff in here about that you do things with the youth?
Right, we haven't had a chance, to be honest with you, in the new parish, because of the short amount of, in the new center, because of the short amount of time we've been there. But in our parish, in our church, we've had blood drives, we've had collection for food, collection for Easter baskets, Thanksgiving drives, all kinds of community events there. But we haven't had that chance since the coronavirus too. We're kind of limited of what we can do right now.
Okay, and then what do you have for the youth?
We had a youth group.
Even prior to?
We've had youth groups, we've had
How many kids come?
approximately 20,
20?
yes.
Okay.
Is there a younger age and an older age group?
Yeah, there's young adults and it varies,
Yeah.
yeah,
The 20 per session, you're saying?
yes.
Just to follow up, what days of the week do the CCD or classes take place?
They come on Mondays, well, they would come on Mondays and Tuesdays, but we've been doing everything virtual.
That's what you've done for a number of years, Mondays and Tuesdays?
Right,
Right around 5 o'clock
yes, sir,
for an hour?
yes, sir.
Sorry,
No, that's
I
fine.
couldn't help you answer some of these
No,
questions.
I knew that, but,
You did, okay.
yeah.
All right. And
Mr.
Father Joe wanted to say something. If you could indulge us, come on, Father Joe. You must have heard something that you
Yeah, with regards to our CCD program, as of...
Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Father John Noche, Joselito Noche. I'm the pastor of Our Lady Queen of Peace, and I stay in 1603 Marne Highway. With regards to the CCD program, right now we're doing virtual. In the future, because our CCD program is getting smaller, all right, we might not use the parish center, we might use again the school, which we're using before, right? So we don't know yet what's going to happen because of the COVID. We don't know the complete number of students we have. So I cannot say that it will cause traffic once the CCD program is done. But the plan before of having an extension on that building is not going to happen. Right?
Where you were going to have classrooms?
Yeah,
that what-
that's not going to happen right now.
Okay, I
Right.
see. So the only part you built was the actual,
The parish center.
Okay,
All right,
gotcha.
there's no extension.
Well, that's what I
a
thought when I
phase two.
saw it, like-
Yeah, it was a phase two, but we ran out of money, so it's not
Okay.
going to happen.
okay, I'm just curious, when you just said that the numbers are going down with CCD, I don't think it really has anything to do with this, but I'm going to ask anyways. Why are the numbers going
Well,
down?
we don't know because of the COVID. A lot of parents are afraid to bring their children, so the registration are going down. But we don't know, once it's open up again, the registration may go up. We really don't know because of the COVID.
I didn't know if it was because of that or
Oh.
just,
It's just because of
Gotcha.
the nature of what we're pandemic.
okay.
Okay.
Are there any other questions about the topics we've discussed so far?
Yes, Mr. Costa, I have a couple questions, and this might be for Mr. Miller. With regards to Lumberton Road, Mr. Costa, wasn't there at some point a request of the residents on Lumberton Road for permission, easement rights, or permission to relocate poles?
There may have been, I just don't recall.
I have that answer.
Come on, Bill.
Yes, well, we saw their concerns, and we felt their pain, and so we moved our side so that it wouldn't affect, we widened our side so it wouldn't affect their side.
I understand. What was the purpose of, was that for stacking reasons?
It would have been
maybe?
for a right-hand turn, you needed a passing lane on that side. Going, you know what I'm saying?
Which would have been, the stacking would have been created by a left out onto Lumberton
Yes,
Road? Okay.
yes, and then you would have needed it. We didn't, we felt like if it was our place, we wouldn't want to have to lose some of our property, so we said, take it off our property.
Right, so in essence, then that lost your ability to allow parishioners to make the left-hand turn onto Lumberton Road?
Yes,
Because
kinda, yes.
the stacking wouldn't happen, there was not enough room?
Yes,
So is that what drove the right out onto Lumberton Road?
yes.
So curious, the entrance and exit on Lumberton Road is configured a little differently than that on Marne Highway. There's that pork chop on
Yeah, we have
Marne
a pork
Highway.
chop, exactly.
But on Lumberton Road, you don't have that. Have you noticed that
There is a pork chop on
there
that
is?
side. yes.
Okay. So the residents haven't been making the left-hand turn onto
As far as I
Lumberton
know.
Road?
You know, I'm not out there all the time,
Right.
but I would hope they're not, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So everything's right out?
Everything's copacetic, no accidents,
Right.
yeah,
So everything's right out of the parish
yes,
center? No lefts at all?
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes,
Another question. Yes.
Kathy Newcomb, zoning officer for Kingsport Township, I have a couple questions. One, does the county need to take a look, revisit this application again as they did the first time?
I would suggest you not, I'll let the planner answer that, but I would suggest you not from a legal perspective, only because the traffic pattern is not changing at all, and there's no variables that are changing that would necessitate another review by the county. With that said, I'll have the professional planner who knows more about this stuff than I do speak.
I would agree completely with what he just said. It would take a site plan application to trigger an additional county review, and this application is basically just a modification of the prior use variance, which is strictly a municipal, the municipality has total jurisdiction over that, and so there's no real county involvement here.
So then we don't need to have in our files no letter of interest from the county then?
I don't believe you do, no.
Okay, and who makes that call?
I think Bob might have, I don't know.
We don't mind if you wanted that
Yeah.
to happen.
Well, here's the reason why. I deal with the county on a daily basis in my office. And one of the things that I find out that they want to know what's going on. And I always feel that it protects all of us, meaning the township, the applicant. Can't take verbiage and put it in a file. And if the county comes along and finds out that, yes, that there was approved, and someone says, listen, nobody came to us for us to revisit this. So my question is, I guess it's a legal one, is that whether or not we're required, because the county was a significant part of this first application, do they have any interest or none that we can say, yeah, we did our job, they don't care about them?
As much as I say no, I'm afraid it'll be unconvincing. So, with that in mind, I don't mind Mr. Chairman, if you wish to condition this resolution upon a look-see by the county planning board to see if they have no objection.
Was the county given notice of this application?
They were given notice by way of certified announcer.
Okay. And have they responded in any way?
They have not responded.
I think the key is they're not changing the use really. The parish hall was basically going to remain a parish hall, and this variance basically just modifies the activities that can occur within that use. And it responds to a condition in the prior variance, but it's not something that really impacts the county facilities.
Well,
But, you know, I understand your concern.
disagree, because now the church is asking to be a church more than.
No, we're not.
Okay.
And the parking was there regardless. Whether the mass was across the street or here, the parking would still be there.
Well, it comes down to a legal issue, which is obviously up to you.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
And we do concede that the parish hall has some aspects of the church. We concede that.
I only have really one other, and that is in regards to, we know from the very beginning that there was going to be activities such as Deacon Leo had stated in regards to weddings, being buildings we approved with the use of the groom and everything being, changing there, some inside activity of the church itself. I guess the question I have is in regards to no outside vendors or activity. Do we consider the Boys and Girl Scouts an outside activity?
I should say that I know that most churches have similar activities. I know Lutheran Church accepts the Boy Scouts right now. It's the host of the Boy Scouts in Hainesport Township. And I think those are the kind of typical community activities, voluntary, that churches do for the community, and that's to be commended. I hope that the board doesn't consider that to be some kind of money-making banquet operation. There's no money made at all.
Well, no,
It's free.
there's no monetary issue of what I'm looking at. I'm just looking at defining what is allowed there versus what is not allowed there from outside entities.
Yeah, we're asking really, like you said, it's assuming the characteristics of the church. Yeah, it is. It's right across the street from the other one, and it performs some of the same activities. And this church wants to be treated like any other church. They want to do some of the same community activities, which are good for us. Whether it's blood drives, whether it's helping the Boy Scouts, whether it's helping the poor, all those things.
Can I say one thing?
You can say two things.
I think about, and I'm not sure of the exact date, but the township was having a collection for I think it was metals, and you wanted to put containers in our parking lot, and we were more than happy to help the township too. So is it a moneymaker? No. But we're here for the community, for the better of, for the good of Hainesport. So if we could help Hainesport out in any way, within reason, we would love to help out Hainesport, whether it's the township collecting a metal and putting containers, we were more than happy to allow that too.
Right, after repeated requests. So I'm glad that we're working together now.
Yes.
But there was some
we're here
denials
for you.
before then.
Okay.
Okay, so thank
Leo,
you.
while you're up here, tell us about, have you had benefits for people that are injured or sick?
We would love to have as many benefits as we can for anybody who's sick or in need. We're here for the community and for the people of our parish. Recently, we haven't, but years past, we've had. There was a young man who needed a bone marrow transplant, and we were here for them, Michael Mashishin, things like that. And if we're there for, you don't have to be Catholic for us to help you. We'll help you any way we can. Okay?
Just, someone made the comment, it almost sounds like on weekends, that's going to become the church instead of the original building. But a lot of it is COVID-based, is what you're saying. Just curious, if 2 years from now we get to a normal state where we're not social distancing anymore and everybody, you know, would you intend to continue to use all your masses?
Sure.
At the parish center instead of
That's a good
returning
question.
to the church?
We would love to use our little church as much as we can. The people love our little church. But sometimes there's a need for a larger area. So we love our little church. It's in our hearts, and we'll use that as much as possible. But when there's a need, we would like to be able to use our parish center too.
Okay, my point being,
We don't know what the
normal
future is
Sunday
going to bring.
masses would normally be in the church.
Yes,
All things being equal here, but if you were going to have like a large, you know, you'll go back and forth, where right now you're saying all your masses on the weekends are going to be at the parish center.
oh, right now, yes.
Right.
So Deacon Leo, I think what you're saying is that you want flexibility,
We would like that.
like any other church, to have the mass held in room B versus room A, right?
Absolutely, yes. That would be very helpful.
All right.
And then that parking will also, sorry to interrupt, but just on that same point. So that parking at the existing church will also remain available?
Absolutely.
So that if there was a need or...
The same way we did, that they used to come this way, they can park at the church and go that way. Either way, it's our parking area.
That church will remain, it's not...
Absolutely.
sold off, so
We
that
would
could
hope it
act
remains forever.
As a safety valve.
Yes, sir.
for parking. So that answers that question. I may have some more later. Just to follow up, and this just sort of trying to clarify based on Mr. Newcomb's comment, because I do think it would be helpful for the board and the applicant. I do know that the prior resolutions and the earlier testimony and the application actually was very specific and said that the facility will not be rented out to any outside organizations, to parishioners only. So I think it would be important that if there is a desire to allow the Boy Scouts or a blood drive or any other 501c3 or civic entities to be able to use that facility, that we sort of accurately represent it. Because we sort of started off by saying that the church would, that the use of the parish center would not be advertised or used by outside people or organizations. So I think it's going to be important to kind of
Okay, that's a good
quantify that.
question.
Yeah.
The Knights of Columbus is an organization that represents us, or we represent them. And they have a blood drive every year. And we try to help them out because it's a good thing to do for the community and the public. And they needed a place to do a blood drive. We allowed them to be there. The Knights of Columbus is they're our parishioners, and they help coordinate it.
Let's be clear, Deacon Leo, do you intend, I may have already asked this, but do you intend to use the facility as any type of banquet facility for
No,
third parties?
no.
Do you intend to make money on it as a
No.
banquet facility by advertising it to others?
No, we're not marketing our place to,
Well, let me play devil's advocate.
go ahead.
You have a parishioner that approaches you, that parishioner is a member of, I don't know, come up, the
Lutheran
Mummers.
Church down the street.
The Mummers Club or some organization that has nothing to do with religious activities. They just happen to one of your parishioners, and someone says, why don't you ask the church if we can have our event at your church because it's
Right.
bigger.
That's a great question. We would hope that it's a church-related function. We're not looking for the mummers to come in and, use our hall. We're using it for church purposes, for our parishioners,
I think
not
that-
for third parties.
I think what you have to realize is that many churches are using, that's what community outreach is. When you do blood drives, when you have the local Boy Scouts, when you have, like our church has AA, when you have things like that, it is a benefit to the community. And it's not an everyday thing that you have to do.
But that's what brings community together, and that's what we're about. Thank you.
That's the community portion.
Thank you.
And it's always been like that as far as I can remember from, I mean, I grew up in this community,
Sure.
so therefore it's been that way for a long time.
Absolutely.
So I would have never even questioned that. Now, the mummers or, my organization's having a card party, can we use your facilities? I could see, no, that might not be
Yeah, it's a
something
little
you want
outside.
to do. But the other stuff is just
Community-based,
stuff that
Stuff.
communities do.
yeah.
But I think,
Community or church-based.
but
Yes.
going back to what Mr. Taylor said, I think that you might want to quantify what exactly you mean with that as well, because Otherwise you're going to get somebody that's going to come in and say, well, you let them do it, why don't you let us
Right,
do it?
that's why we have a pastor,
that-
and our pastor makes those decisions, and
Yeah.
he's backing our parishioners and our church.
Right.
And he's not there to try and, open it up to the mummers or to those kind of,
Okay.
things like.
I do have another question for you too. I don't know where I just saw, maybe it's on this page, that you were using it for weddings and for after the funerals,
Yes.
things like that. And then you had said how people might not be able to afford to have a big hall for a reception.
Correct.
So my one concern that I would have if you're having, say, a wedding reception there.
Yes.
Do you have a liquor license? And if you do not have a liquor license, and if everybody's bringing in their own liquor or supplying it for the reception, are you going to carry the insurance
Yes, we
for
will.
that and, take responsibility if there's any kind of accident? because of the
Absolutely, we will,
drunken driving?
yes.
Good point.
So Deacon Leo or Mr. Costa, you had said that the church has already been approved for a commercial kitchen? That was part of the original application?
The large kitchen that I saw when I went there it looks, I'm calling it a commercial kitchen. I don't know if it's really a commercial kitchen, but it's beautiful. It's got a big oven.
It's already.
Yes, we already have a kitchen.
I understand. So this is going to be more than just having the wedding there. You're now going to have
Well, if
receptions
we
there
had,
with
listen,
catered.
if we
and-
had a pancake breakfast for, another thing we had was breakfast with Santa. So we can make breakfast for the
Those are
children.
fun, yeah.
Things like that.
Those are great community
We're not
events.
looking to be a catering hall.
Well, because that's a concern. So, yeah,
Yes.
the religious community is so very important to the Hainesport community, the residential community, and so is our business community. So, there's concern there that you're going to now compete with businesses who have been a big part of this community as well, specifically the Bradford or Cater to You, which may not be in Hainesport, but it's right over the border.
Right.
In Mount Laurel.
Absolutely.
As well
Great
as local
question.
businesses.
We're not there to hurt anybody, we're there to help everybody. And we would only allow, hopefully we would allow things in our center for people who have the need. We're not looking to advertise our reception halls.
But word of mouth will quickly.
Yes, you won't have to.
Well, word of mouth, but we have a pastor who makes those decisions too, and he's very fair and balanced.
Well,
You can
so,
solve that problem by just having receptions for people you marry, period.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes.
All the sacraments that we're doing, even weddings or the funerals, it has to be a parishioner, not the uncle of somebody that would come in. So any weddings that we have, the wedding has to be done in our place. It's not a wedding in Moorestown and using our hall. It has to be a parishioner, and it has to come from me. Anything that we do also, the bishop has to approve it. Anything big that we're going to do, the bishop has to know it. So all the things that we're doing in the parish, it has to be parish-based and should be registered as a member of the parish.
so Father Noche, if I may ask, does the bishop approve this type of application as well? Do they approve the use variance application or
Not
the parish
all.
center?
What I'm trying to say, no. not
Okay,
all.
so there's no vetting in terms of the diocese with this application or the parish center and having to keep the old parish center? I'm just trying to understand procedurally, does the diocese get involved in?
The diocese knows everything what's happening.
Okay.
When we built the center, it was approved by the diocese, by the bishop has to approve it. There's a building committee also in the diocese has to approve it. And everything was approved. The building's already there. It's not blessed yet because the bishop is afraid to come because of the
Right.
COVID.
Sure.
We will have our blessing one of these days. But right now, we just want to be flexible, that we could use our parish center that was built, even for masses, that you got to be flexible, that we're not constrained of what we're doing. All right, this is for the people of Hainesport also, and also for the
Right.
people, the Catholic community in Hainesport.
Yeah, and
Go ahead.
but I recall, anyway, at the time of the original approval, it was always the intent to be able to have social activities at the parish center, whether it be wedding receptions or, it wasn't finely defined, but it was always intended to have, social activities. The issue here is is the restriction on the number of masses that could be
Yeah.
held in the facility based on what was originally approved.
Yeah, right now, as Deacon Lee has said, we have to cancel one masses because of the COVID. We only have 4 masses during weekends. One on Saturday at 4:30, and the other 3 masses Sunday in the morning. And by 11 o'clock, we're out of the parking lot. Any other questions?
The kitchen that's in there is a commercial kitchen?
Looks like a commercial kitchen. It was supposed to be a commercial kitchen, but I don't know what defines a commercial kitchen. But we have a nice oven, we have a nice stove, and we have all this vent and everything.
We built it as it was presented to us by the authorities. So it is a commercial kitchen with a hood and everything else.
But it's been approved by,
By the township.
No, not-
by the-
Yeah, the township, was the township came in?
Board of Health?
Board of Health.
Yeah, they came in and it was approved and everything.
They approved everything?
So do you think you'll be cooking for these weddings, or do you think it'll be catered?
Mostly catered. The kitchen's not made for that, really.
Right.
It's more
For large.
catered. Yeah, we have,
That's for your pancake, right?
unless we make the pancakes for the children.
Right. Okay, I suppose that I have to get in some, the mandatory language, so I'm gonna have to invite the planner back, and because I have the checklist that Mr. Taylor, the planner.
Can I just before, because I'm guessing Mr. Miller's going to do sort of his planning rationale
Yes.
for these things. So if I can just sort of clarify a couple
Good.
questions. Assuming any of the weddings and events and receptions will be entirely indoors, there won't be outdoor receptions or amplified music outdoors?
Yeah, we've had,
Come forward, please.
we average about 5 weddings a year. And that's a big year for us, 5. Usually it's about 3. We've averaged, this year we have 5. Everything, when we do sacraments, they have to be inside a church setting. We don't do outside weddings and things like that. And if there's any, reception, it would be in the hall.
Interior,
Interior,
not exterior.
not exterior, no.
And while you're talking about, I know talking about noise too. Can you advise everyone about?
Right, I know the concern might have been a noise, the sound systems, if there's a party, everything goes through the speaker that goes through the sound system right now, and that's the same sound system that we use at the 4:30 Mass, the 7:30, the 9, and the 10:30. There's no, boom, 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 there's nothing like that.
Talking very briefly while you're up, that's good timing.
Sure.
You had mentioned that you do a food pantry.
Yes.
Is that for collection and distribution, or is there any sort of a soup kitchen operation that
No.
also occurs?
It's for drop-off and takeout.
And then one of the things that, in reading the prior minutes of resolution, obviously parking.
Sure.
You guys were granted some relief.
Sure.
And a lot of that revolved around the maximum capacity of 350 seats.
Sure.
In the, I'll call it sanctuary now.
Yes.
Within the sanctuary, when that sanctuary is operational on your peak Saturday afternoon, Sunday, and holy days, the other portions of the building are not occupied, correct?
Correct.
And-
Oh, well, we have two crying rooms.
Okay.
A crying room?
Yes.
Can you tell me what that is?
It's for the children, you know what that is. When
Not
when you
yet.
bring kids,
Yeah.
sometimes they could be a little active,
Yeah.
and some families feel more comfortable in a
Yes.
crying room.
So it's not for me.
No,
That's what I call my office.
yeah, right, yeah.
The other thing I wanted to try to clarify is that phase 2, you're not abandoning that approval, you're just deferring that you may still build that at some point in the future.
I'm gonna let Father answer that.
Right now, that plan is canceled. I cannot ask, maybe 20 years from now it will happen, but not in my term. But as I'm standing as a pastor right now, it's not going to happen.
But you don't want to abandon it,
No, you don't want to abandon
do
it.
you?
Yeah, I do not to abandon it,
Money,
but
there's no money right now.
there's no money right now.
Right.
We cannot afford to put an
And
extension.
that's why
I understand.
wanted to clarify that.
I do too.
I would not be inclined to abandon that approval. and where I was going from reading this, we understand that parking is an issue and traffic is an issue. And in doing dozens or hundreds of place of worship applications, there are some very simple ways that if there is parking overflow, the church can add one more service on Sunday morning, and then that'll end up distributing the parking issue. If everyone's going to a certain, or there's only one service on Sunday mornings, by going to two services, you spread that parking out. So knowing that there was a prior variance, and I think the board should reaffirm that variance to provide only 108 spaces where 119 are required, I think it might be appropriate to help the public and everybody else that if for some reason, at any point in the future, the township determines that there is inadequate parking, that the applicant would come to the town administratively to either add services or potentially expand the parking if necessary, or use overflow parking at their existing church to help mitigate any potential issues. We don't have much of a safety net. People are parking on either one of the road frontages out there. So that would provide some level of safety for the neighbors and the public and everybody for you guys to be able to move forward and work toward confirm that, reaffirm that parking variance with some level of comfort that we can always work. There are things we can do to work this out. It's not like a restaurant where once there's too many people, there's too many people. There are ways around that. The same would carry through that if at some point in the future, the classrooms were built and there was a large Sunday school occurring at the same time that could then take the maximum capacity, or even a soup kitchen or something else over that 350, that could also. But it sort of creates a safety net that we can address those when and if we ever have an issue in the future.
And also our religious ad is on Monday and Tuesday, not on Sunday. So it will be a different group from the people going to church on the weekends.
All right. Mr. Planner, the show is yours right now.
I think that addressed a majority of the comments that we had in our report, unless Mr. Miller wants to go through and touch on anything.
No, you prepared a report. I know, so why don't you just hit on some of the points that the panel asked about.
Yeah, actually, because of all the extensive testimony, my testimony is going to be a little bit briefer than it would have been otherwise. Basically, what we're here for this evening is to modify the approval that we received in 2016. It is a D1 use variance. This is a use which is inherently beneficial, and that means that by definition, it addresses and meets the positive criteria. And basically, the review of an inherently beneficial use involves a 4-step process called the Seeker balancing test. And its root, it's just to basically you look at the benefits versus the detriments. If the benefits outweigh the detriments, then the use satisfies the criteria. So I'm going to go right to the Seeker test, and I'm going to start with the benefits. And I believe that they're extensive. First of all, I think it advances at least 3 purposes of the municipal land use law. Purpose A, to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in the state in a manner that will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. And I think everyone can recognize that a religious institution satisfies that particular purpose, in part because it does help advance the safety and morals and welfare of the community. Purpose G, to provide sufficient space and appropriate locations for a variety of agricultural, residential, recreational, commercial, and industrial uses in open space, both public and private, according to their respective environmental requirements in order to meet the needs of all New Jersey citizens. This purpose was put on the record at the original hearing, and I think the board found that that purpose was advanced by the original application, and I believe it will continue to be advanced. This is an appropriate location for the use that's in question. And then finally, purpose N, to encourage coordination of the various public and private procedures and activities shaping development with a view of lessening the cost of such development into the more efficient use of land. I threw this in here partly because I think that in addition to all the other benefits we talked about this evening, it also provides a little more efficiency in the way that the congregation operates and allows them to take advantage of the building to move some of the activities that have been off-premise on-premise. and, just allows them to get a little more utility out of the building than they would have gotten prior to these variances, which I think are going to clarify what they can and cannot do with that structure. The other benefits are basically the ability to practice your faith, which is guaranteed by the United States Constitution and certain federal statutes. It's just a basic underlying right that all Americans have to practice their faith and to pursue their religion, and this variance helps to address that right. Again, religious uses also provide a lot of community benefits. You've already heard all those explained in detail, so I won't go any further, but just to say that that's an additional benefit of the church. This application also responds to the current pandemic and the crisis that's created in the community by providing a way for these parishioners to pursue their religion and also to be able to social distance and practice their faith in a more safe and healthy environment than they would otherwise have the opportunity to take advantage of. So that's another example of how the application advances the public health and welfare. And basically, it helps to also address the needs of an existing congregation, which is a longstanding member of the Hainesport community. And it supports that institution within the community, which I think is very beneficial overall to the township. The second prong of the balancing test is to identify the potential impacts of the use. And again, this all went forward at the prior hearing. Those impacts were addressed, and there were certain site plan provisions that were incorporated later on. I apologize for not knowing all the specifics of the site plan, because once the use variance occurs, there's really not any need for the planner. But I did, try to familiarize myself a little bit with those resolutions, and I know there was additional mitigation measures that were imposed during the site plan process, and they mainly dealt with the landscaping and some of the traffic considerations. Bottom line, the impacts of this use were deemed to be acceptable at the prior hearing, and I don't see anything in this application that appreciably either intensifies or changes the character of the use. It gives a little more flexibility in terms of the activities, and obviously the mass is a change, but the ability to hold the masses here as opposed to across the street isn't really changing the intensity of the use. It's basically the same congregation and the same participants. They're just at a little different location, but within the same section of the community. So I don't believe there's any significant additional impact from this use variance this evening. So based on that, the third step of the process is to identify mitigation measures. Again, there were a lot of those imposed during the original application. And also, the mitigation measures tend to come from the board and its professionals. And I think that's been part of the process this evening. Scott, for example, came up with, I think, some good ideas about how to clarify what can and cannot occur within the building. And I think, for example, a mitigation measure might be a condition in the resolution that says that the activities that are located within the parish hall would be the 531C type entities, and I would maybe add social service agencies and related religious activities, because those are the kinds of things that typically take place in any parish hall, any church, synagogue, whatever. Those are typical of these kinds of institutions. And there can be a prohibition against the commercial activities. That was in the intent of the original variance, and I think that the church is on board with that because they don't have any intention of having a commercial operation here anyway. So I'm not sure how exactly that would get worded, but I think that would be one of the additional mitigation measures that might have come out of this hearing. So basically, then you get to the last step of the balancing test, and that's to weigh whether the benefits outweigh the detriments. And I think clearly in the instance of this application, the benefits far outweigh any potential detriments. Most of the detriments that were identified were dealt with at the prior application. There's some additional mitigation measures that are going to come out of this hearing that are further going to address any potential impacts that this use would have above and beyond what it typically would have. And I think as a result, it easily satisfies the balancing test. The benefits far outweigh any detriments, and as a consequence, it satisfies the Sika balancing test. In addition to the Sika balancing test, the legislature about 10, 15 years ago also said that a inherently beneficial use application must also address the conventional negative criteria. And as the board knows, that's the variance can't result in significant or substantial detriment to the public welfare or a substantial impairment of the intent or purpose of the zone plan. And in this application, I don't believe, first of all, that there's any question that this is basically contributing to the public welfare, so it easily satisfies that prong of the negative criteria. In terms of impairment of the intent or purpose of the zone plan, this is already an established use on the property, so the potential for it to be any kind of significant impairment of the intent or purpose of the zone plan, again, was addressed at the original hearing. And I don't see any, because the relief we're seeking this evening basically just modifies that prior approval and isn't really intensifying the use or changing its character, I don't see any potential here for any further impairment of the intent or purpose of the zone plan. And as a consequence, I believe it satisfies the conventional negative criteria as well. And to wrap it up, basically, I believe that this use satisfies all the applicable criteria with merit the board's approval.
Thank you.
Any questions, Mr. Miller?
So I have one question that I've been struggling with since it was stated. I truly believe that the church is definitely community-oriented. I believe in the things that they're looking to do and community-oriented. Now, from a construction point of view, I'm part of that office, and I know for a fact that those plans only represented that there was to be a bride and groom's room for them to change to be able to be married. What I am struggling with and where it comes in is, what is it under an inherent beneficial use? Was that I don't ever recall receptions for a wedding afterwards being discussed. There were no time frames of limitations. I know for a fact that Bradford down the street goes sometimes to 1 o'clock in the morning. My struggle here to the board members here is, does anyone recall this being part of the application? There was never time frames. Out of the rest of what they're introducing, I agree that there are many, many good benefits. This is the only one that I am struggling with in regards to that. It was never discussed, and where is the reception and inherently beneficial use as a church?
Allow us to address the time, first of all. Mr. Miller.
No, go ahead.
Deacon Leo, come forward. Well, we talked about the potential times for
Sure.
receptions.
So all our weddings take place at 1 o'clock on Saturdays, okay? So therefore, they take pictures, and by 1, okay, it starts at 1, by 1:30, 2 o'clock, the wedding's over. They take pictures for a half hour, right, the bride and groom, and then you go over to a reception place, probably by 3:30. I don't know any wedding, unless we're in another country maybe, that lasts about 4 hours, a reception. So therefore, by 8, you're done. So if it was used for that, we're not advertising it, we're not looking for it, we're not promoting it. But what I'm saying is, you know, we're not there like an all-nighter. So what was the question?
The thrust of the hours, when would if you had a reception there, when would it end? Would it go to midnight?
No, not to midnight, no. And not in the wee small hours of the night, no.
So what time?
Say by, what, 9?
Approximately.
By 9 o'clock?
Are you going to change the wedding time? I mean, right now
No,
it's at 1.
because we can't change the wedding time because we have the mass and it can't change.
So if
So the mass is at 4:30, we have to have time for the mass.
So if weekends are going to, if it's going to be a weekend church, and you have weddings at 1 o'clock, how are you going to use the church for receptions if you've got 4:30 mass?
No, we're not having the reception,
I mean,
the
I'm
mass
sorry.
over there.
Oh.
The mass is in the church. You know what I'm saying? In the church. That's the parish hall you're talking about.
Right.
The little church is where the mass is.
On Saturdays at 4:30.
No, no. The sacrament of marriage starts at 1 o'clock,
Yes.
okay? The mass is at 4:30, therefore they have to be done.
So they can't have a reception on a Saturday then?
Not in our, no, the reception would be at the hall. The sacrament of marriage is in the little church.
Well, yeah, but right now you're having your masses in the new building at 4:30.
Right,
So if someone wants to have a reception
We
after
wouldn't,
the
we'd have to have the
1:00
mass in the church.
All right, can I make a comment?
Sure.
I belong to a church where we have had wedding receptions in our fellowship hall. We have almost always have funerals, receptions afterwards. Very few people go out. That the wedding receptions that we have are generally very like cake and ice cream, not ice cream, but cake and maybe a few, fruit or something else. The 1 or 2 wedding receptions that were 2 to 3 hours, and I think this is church policy, there is no liquor. You have the punch, you can have, tea and coffee and whatever. One person had a meal. One was a second marriage, it was Norwegian, and they did a Norwegian wedding reception. Which was, they do singing, they do, so they had singing, they had, conversations about the bride and groom. And there again, it was like 3 hours. I've never been, most wedding receptions, whether they're in a hall or whether they're in the church reception area, they usually last 4 hours. You have your reception from 4 to whatever,
4 to 8.
4 to 8, and maybe you go to 10. I've been to a couple of weddings over the years where you go to 11, but I've never been to a wedding reception after 11.
Yeah, by then you're done.
Even in down the street. So I think that we're just keep repeating the same thing
Yes,
over
ma'am.
and over.
I agree.
Now, funerals, I have been to a funeral at your church, and they asked us not to talk because it was a church and you were going to do a mass. So by having a reception hall or a reception after the church, or in some cases, because of time restraints, sometimes they're before. That, there again, you're not going to be there forever.
Right, and we don't have funerals at night, we only have them during the day.
Dead, right.
Yeah.
You're never, you just don't. So I think what you're bringing up is not really necessary.
Well, I respectfully disagree as well. I mean, I'm still not clear on the scheduling. Is there a chance that maybe because there's going to be a 4:30 mass in the bigger parish center, that maybe you'll have a Friday wedding? I mean, is it a church policy that you only have weddings on Saturday at 1, and then you'll have to wait until after the 4:30 mass to have a later reception? I mean, maybe perhaps the church hasn't logistically thought this through, but it's a very real concern to
Right.
residents.
I agree. Regardless, I'm just going to say that the noise level, the same, like what Ted said, the same sound system is the sound system that we use at 7:30 in the morning. We have music, we have an organist, and it's not even going through the building to anywhere. So I'm not saying, we're not like boom, boom, boom.
It's not just a noise concern either. You're going to have your parishioners are not going to be there. It's going to be a much different crowd than your church crowd. It's not as solemn of a gathering. It's a party. It's a wedding.
Right.
And I've been to weddings that have lasted 5-6 hours, and
And they're gonna, and if they're having a reception, they're gonna bring in their own DJ, and they're gonna bring in their own sound system.
We have our sound
too.
system, and it's,
But a DJ's not gonna tell you that. They're gonna tell you they have their own because they do their mixes and everything, so.
May I ask, since I sense some strong opinions, what do you want to see?
well, it's not me. It's what the board and the community would want, and maybe perhaps we're at a point where these things maybe need to be thought through a little bit more, so that there's some comfort level in terms of the weddings and the time,
Yeah.
because that's going to bring a lot more
I think what I
people.
heard is that they believe that any such reception, few as they are, will end by 9, maybe with some flexibility, worst case scenario, maybe by 10, but I'll let the witnesses speak. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, most of our weddings are from our parishioner, and we know them. And before we schedule a wedding, we make sure that it doesn't overlap with the masses and everything. So this year, last year, we only have 1 wedding. This year, I think we have 5, all right? So most of these weddings doesn't have the reception there. We only have 1 reception for this year, who's going to use our reception hall. Most of them are just church wedding. So I don't think.
Well, you build it and they will come. You have a beautiful parish center.
Yeah, I do
and
understand, but
the
I'm the
demand is
pastor. I'm going to limit everything. I don't want anything, big parties like that. All right? Regarding to the DJ and everything, it has to be restricted. Alcohol also has to be restricted. There are restrictions. I'm the pastor. I know what I'm doing. So it's 1 wedding a year or 5 weddings a year.
I have to, I'm also agreeing with Trish that we're focusing just on the weddings, but, I mean, even at our parish center, and I'm
Yeah.
in Resurrection Parish in Delaware, we have a big parish center. And we don't do outside things, but we have parish events.
Yeah.
We had a comedy night.
Carnival, something
We
like that.
had a, something else where they brought in a band for it. And so you're going, I mean, but there were still parish events.
Yeah.
They weren't outside entities. And we still had to deal with the issue of the food and the music and whatever. And typically those events ended at 8, 9 o'clock at night. So you're still going to have, you're going to try to control, I don't know, those kind of events as well.
There's also ABC guidelines that'll need to be followed, and that's, through the clerk's office. So there are going to be other outside agencies that are going to have conditions of approval for these events as well, especially when there's alcohol involved. So.
Right, we'll be glad to condition any resolution upon adherence, strict adherence to any ABC rules and township rules governing such issues.
Well, with all due respect, at the end of this event, of every time that the planning board approves something, that resolution is what I, as the zoning officer, have to enforce. And when it's clearly defined, as we talked about earlier, quantifying and clarifying the uses, if the board says you can have a reception till 9 o'clock, doesn't matter to me. What I wanted is on record. So then at 10 o'clock, when the flexibility comes in, and over the weekend, the neighbors decide to call the zoning officer to enforce those rules, that's what it comes down to. It is not that I'm being negative in any way, because I agree with the majority of the things that they want are definitely 100% great for this community. Yet a reception is not part of a community-based event. And when it comes down to defining things and I'm enforcing it, the only thing that I have is that resolution that I can go by. And that's what I would like to see, something defined. If they choose to approve it, that's fine. But I want clarification in that resolution if they choose to do so.
I can appoint
That
you
makes
on
sense.
those
Absolutely.
concerns. I would only point out that the activities we're discussing are probably done by most churches, if not all churches in Hainsport, and other surrounding towns as well. Mr. Miller, do you have something to add?
That was what I was going to say from the get-go. This is a typical activity that occurs in any religious house of worship, and it's often smaller weddings where, like when I got married, I didn't have any money, so we use the church because it's available and but the churches control and manage these things. I mean, I think that's a consideration as well. I think you can tell that there's a man in charge, and I don't think you're going to have a problem. But again, I think you're right that maybe an 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock cap on it is whatever the board decides. is a fair cap, so you have a standard to look to, and I think that's important. But I think it's just, from a planning perspective, weddings are a typical activity in any house of worship, and a reception is an extension of the wedding.
I disagree. I agree with the wedding, I don't agree with the reception.
All right,
They're
Can I make a suggestion so we can move forward, please?
Yes.
We've got other things that we have to take care of in terms of this application. I'm not trying to get off of anything else. The 11 o'clock thing doesn't enter into this because there's no more new business. This is the last case. I'm asking the deacon and priest, is that the correct title? Is it safe to say that all sacraments of wedding will be in the existing, smaller, original church?
Yes. I hate to limit it to that, Mr. Rutherford. I believe he said he does that, all weddings there now, he plans on having weddings there now, but there may be some exceptional case where there's a highly popular person getting married and hundreds of people come, who knows?
Just a second. Isn't this thing about having masses in the new building?
But they want to change, they're changing part of what it was initially approved for.
They're not here for that.
But that's what's on, but that's what's on here.
They are here for that.
But when they were originally approved, they were approved with a large kitchen, with an intent to use that kitchen, and to use that for church activities. Now, what did we didn't define
Yes,
specifically what
yes,
those activities were.
I can remember asking about that originally. And so originally, we were told that it was going to be used for the high holy days like Easter and Christmas, Christmas Eve, what have you. And then when we asked about the other activities, there was no mention of those things.
Well, we're better defining it tonight then, and there's something.
I think they have to, because I think that's what most parish centers, when I belong to, that's what most parish centers do. Now, I don't think I think the wedding thing is a slightly beyond type of thing, but other parish activities involve social gatherings and using the kitchen and using, maybe having music.
I might add, the Kennedy Street Center has a beautiful commercial kitchen. The firehouse has a beautiful commercial kitchen.
It's the wedding that's the, wedding is the, yeah, the wedding is the issue.
They don't have wedding receptions.
They don't have, it's the wedding reception. But
It's smaller than a residential.
I want to clarify one other thing with regards to this reception. I hate to get into that. Will liquor be served at receptions?
It's not our business.
This is like a yes, no.
Yes,
Yes, but you're not providing it, it's the guests will bring it.
yes.
Okay. And will they be permitted to have a band?
Yes.
And whose sound system?
I'm not saying band, but I mean a band. There's music.
No, I'm saying a band.
Yes, okay, a band, yes.
I mean, because they provide their own speaker system is what I'm getting at.
Excuse me?
They provide their own sound system when they come with a band, and DJs, a lot of DJs
Well,
do
it
this
could
thing.
be. I'm not gonna say no. But in regardless, they're not playing till 10 o'clock at night. You know, there's a curfew within the township where Kathy Newcomb might get a call, but I'm sure those people are gonna call the police and say, hey, there's a lot of noise that's past a certain
All
hour.
right, well, you've answered one other question I was getting. If we approve something tonight, is it okay to incorporate 10 o'clock is it?
I would say yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, then that's good.
All right.
After 10 o'clock, we're done.
Yeah, I think they're trying to not be pigeonholed because they want some flexibility. So far, he said 5 weddings a year and only 1 had a reception the entire year. And I suspect that's what will happen in the future as well. Most people want a reception somewhere else, a real hall. But we don't want to limit them in such a degree like they were limited last time about mass being only on two days of the year.
Well,
They want some
with
flexibility.
all due respect on that, okay, the reason that they want to have the mass over there right now is because of social distancing with COVID. That's what's both of the testimony,
Right,
right? Right now. So I'm not asking this or imposing, I'm being a little bit facetious about it. Well, if COVID goes away and all the restrictions go away, does that mean you have to go back to the church with everything? because the deacon just testified that the maximum crowd that he gets at one of the masses was about 110 people. And somebody, I think you asked, what's the capacity of the existing church, and it's 230. So if COVID restrictions are no longer applicable, you know, it's a logical thing to say, well, you know, everything should go back to the church. I'm not saying that, but I'm asking for a little bit of...
We love our little church, and we love to be there, but we don't want to be pigeonholed there either. We want some flexibility.
Yeah.
I might add, sir, that the mentality of the country has changed. It's not that COVID's going to go away tomorrow or a year and 2 years. I just heard something else came up, something called NIC. Actually, NIC disease is coming out, the next virus. People are leery of being in close quarters, and I suspect that will be for some time, with or without the COVID inoculations or taking masks. And it's more of a safety and concern for everyone, and not only that, but it's the mentality of people today. I think standards have changed. The office situation has changed. I don't go to my office every day anymore. A lot of people don't. And I suspect it's that kind of mentality is here to stay for a good many years.
It is. So if I may add, I think that a lot of people today want to stay in one place as opposed to going to 2 different places. I think there's, you know, a benefit to that. So what's happening in society today is most people want to stay in one place and not leave and go to another location. I think also with COVID in the atmosphere now, it may potentially create a situation because of religious exemptions from COVID restrictions, that might result in an increase of request of use for churches for functions. And that's great. I think that for me personally, and going through the minutes from the application in 2016 or 14 to 16 and trying to educate myself on that, there were a lot of, you know, uncertainties between that application and what's being requested today. So I know for me personally, I just would feel comfortable with definitives, knowing exactly what's going to happen, knowing exactly what the timeframes are going to be. I think the discomfort level is just simply because there's just nothing set in stone at this point in terms of what exactly it's going to be used for. I think everybody supports the church and wants this to happen, but there has to be a balance, because when this application is over, we're going to be fielding the phone calls and the complaints and trying to mitigate that. So we just want to be proactive and try to resolve these concerns and make sure that it's just all very clearly stated for our zoning officer to follow, and myself as the administrator and the governing body and the board.
Logically stated. And we've heard the pastor agree to a 10 o'clock p.m. cutoff. They're willing to live with that. And I have a lot of other issues to state, but I don't think anybody's asking about them, so I'll cut it short. Quit while you're ahead, I hope. Any questions from anyone?
And just to clarify, it wasn't a specific condition. Would you agree to comply with the local and state noise ordinance that
Yeah, that would be
applies
given.
anyway, but I think it's important to have it as a question. And just for the board, the cutoff for the New Jersey State Noise Ordinance is 65 decibels at the property line during the day. That actually cuts off at 10 p.m. as well. It drops down to 50 decibels at the level. So having a cutoff time would have some sort of coordination with the state noise ordinance as well.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board?
May I add one last comment?
You just turned it over to me.
One last thing, and forgive me. Forgive me, but I've attended so many of these events myself at various places, churches and whatnot. I kind of know the schedules. The pastor said 10 o'clock's fine for the wedding receptions. However, there may be some other events. I don't want all events closing at 10 o'clock. There may be more quieter events that continue into the evening, maybe to 11 o'clock. And so I wouldn't want to limit all activities to that time. I'd appreciate if you can just keep receptions, the wedding receptions, that's a good thing. That tend to be, I guess, the fear is a lot of noise. Limit that to 10 o'clock p.m.
You're referring, for example, to midnight mass.
Yeah, that's one of them. And they do sing. They don't dance, but they sing.
So would these other events have amplified music?
There's a PA system, sir, that's in the church. All masses use the PA system.
No, I'm not talking about midnight mass. Yes, I'm saying that, so are we going to write a resolution that says all wedding receptions will end at 10 PM, but some other things can go later sometimes?
Well, I just don't want to, you can,
And I apologize, I don't mean to be facetious, but literally,
Micromanaging.
you know, we have.
All right, wait.
Yes, it is.
I want to try to craft a truthful,
Didn't you just say that the state said it ends at 10 o'clock and then it drops?
no, the decibel level reduces from 65 at the property line down to 50.
Okay. Well, I would think that most events are going to end around 10, except your midnight
Midnight
mass.
mass, we had a midnight mass just this time.
Right.
And I don't think anybody complained. Did you get the call, Kathy? Okay, thank you.
There may be, for example, since I've gone to the Holy Cross events, there may be a comedy night that ends at 11 o'clock. Not too much noise, but it ends at 11 o'clock. And the reason why is because if it starts on a Friday, they wait for people to get out of work, and they can get there maybe by 7:30, and they have so many hours to be there, and usually it takes a few hours. So I don't want to limit them for every single event, ladies and gentlemen. I'd appreciate if you can just keep the 10 o'clock curfew to the major loud, I guess, wedding receptions, potentially loud. Not every single event, though. We want to just have the church operate like every other church in town. No other church has these restrictions. So I'd appreciate if we can be reasonable.
let's.
Mr. Costa makes a very good point.
That's right.
This discussion suddenly went off into left field when the subject of catering came up.
Right.
And maybe the deacon shouldn't have used that word, but he did. And then the discussion veered off on the concern that this somehow or other, this church, and I'm not a churchgoer, so I have no dog in this fight, that this church was somehow or other going to operate surreptitiously a catering hall that would compete with others, public in the neighborhood. It's pretty clear that this church isn't doing anything differently than the Baptist church down one end of Marne Highway or the Lutheran church down the other end of Marne Highway. The operations are the same. Now, if the township members are concerned about noise, there are noise ordinances. And I kind of laughed when I heard that concern because I see churches bringing in a rock and roll band, maybe not the Catholic Church, but other churches, and big speakers go with rock and roll bands. My point is that we have somehow or other veered off the discussion here to a very simple expansion of use request into believing that this is somehow or other going to be a surreptitious commercial establishment that ought to be regulated as such. And I think we're just, we've just gone off the rails in that. And I would hope that, and I know Mr. Costa will suggest in the effort to try to reach accommodation here, some limits, but I don't think we should be regulating this as if it's a commercial application. This church isn't doing anything other than St. Paul's is doing down the street. The only difference is they happen to be before us on this variance application. So I think we ought to keep that in mind and be a little more reasonable in dealing with this applicant. I intend to make a motion to grant the variance with whatever conditions on time seem reasonable as proposed by Mr. Costa. And I would hope you would all vote for it.
And I would second it.
It's got to hear public.
So let's not so fast close. Do we have any other comments from our professionals? Mr. Newcomb?
I've said my piece.
Mr. Miller? Mr. Taylor?
No, sir.
Okay. At this moment, I'm going to open to public comments. Okay? Do we have any public comments? Anybody want to stand up and speak their piece about this application? Or anybody online?
There are 4 members online.
Well, till they make up their mind, this lady over here has a question. Step forward, state your name, please.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, full truth, nothing but truth, so help you God? Name, please.
Dolores Pearl Pfeiffer, 23 East in my Hainsport.
What's your first name?
Dolores. D-O-L-O-R-E-S.
Okay.
Excuse me. Speaking to everyone in this room, I know some people agree, disagree. I think the church is doing a wonderful thing, trying to bring people together. I think this gentleman here on the board said it all. Just, I'm sure they know what they're doing. They're not going to do anything ridiculous. I know Father Joe, and I think it's just too much for them. I don't think they will allow anything that should not be there to happen. That's the way, if it does, and it's not their fault, then the police get called. But other than that, I think they should move forward to have a new building. They're happy, the parishioners are happy, let it be. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the folks online? Hearing none, we'll close public comment, and it's now back to the board. What's your pleasure? Oh, I would like to make one comment before we get a motion so that it can be incorporated in it. It has to do with the, don't get nervous, Deacon. It's not a serious one, okay? On Marne Highway, the entrance and exit are very clearly marked. There's paint on the road. There's, you know which ones you go in, which ones you go out, and there's big signs, no left turn. I did visit the property, and I did look at this, and I saw it as a problem, and we're trying to clarify with regards to, what was the term that was used? The
Pork chop?
The pork chop, okay. It's there, you testified to that, but I would like to respectfully suggest that we incorporate in the motion, if there's one coming, that no left turn signs be put on Lumberton roadside.
Okay.
There's two of them on Moyne, and I think they should be, just so somebody doesn't get tempted to come out of there and make a left turn, we have a problem. Okay. Okay.
I just want to kind of, I guess, state my opinion or speak my piece, I guess, whatever you want to call it. But I just have a couple of, I guess, I don't even know what you would call them, but, on this, that's presented to us, it's telling us that, the church is serving thousands of residents in Hainsport. And it says that at a couple different places. And I don't feel that that is truth. I don't feel that you are, let me speak everything and then I'll let you speak, okay? But you don't have thousands of people that come there. I mean, you stated how many people. When you're telling me how many people are coming to a mass, from what I'm understanding, the restrictions now in the state are 50% capacity. So if you can have 230 in there, 115 is your capacity at 50%. So, I mean, technically, you don't really need to move over to the new building because you're within the capacity as set forth by our government in the state of New Jersey. So that's something else. Something else that has been mentioned is about you wanted to use that building because of, different functions of the church. And when I asked about like how many youth come, 20. Well, do you need a building that can hold 350 for 20 youth? No, not really, but is it nice to use? Yes, of course. But I feel like maybe the truth is being stretched, I guess you could say. I don't have a problem with the traffic. I don't have any problem with that. I don't have a problem with you going and having mass over there. I don't have a problem with it. The thing that I'm really struggling with is because I was on the board when we approved this initially, and I asked a lot of very specific questions of how you were going to use it. And I asked, once it was completed, are you going to want to have mass there every week? I was told no. But now that you're here before us wanting to do that, and I know you're saying you don't want to limit yourself. Well, when you're saying you don't want to limit yourself, that means you kind of have intention to do it. So that's where I'm really struggling. And I'm really struggling with the wedding receptions. And the reason I'm struggling with it is twofold. Number one, because you're going to bring outside people in to, you're going to have outside people that are going to be your DJs, or they're going to be your band, or that's going to be your caterers. They're not going to be just Hainsport people, or it's not just going to be your parishioners that are going to be there. The second thing that I'm having a real problem with is there's always alcohol at wedding receptions. And I think I'm looking more out for you as a church, because when someone leaves there and they are drunk and they're driving and they run into one of our residents' homes because they're drunk and they don't know where they're turning, or they mean to turn and they go straight out of the parking lot and they run into that person's house. Those are the kinds of things that I'm concerned about. And I think with the initial variance and the initial approval we gave you, I don't remember anything being said about those kind of things. On one of these others, it says fundraisers, church fundraisers. Well, you could have bingo as a fundraiser, and there's alcohol that could be at bingo too, so those are the things that I'm more concerned about. And just, I don't know, I just feel like that the truth is being stretched a little bit, where it doesn't need to be. So those are my concerns.
May I suggest that we started fresh tonight, basically, in explaining all these things, rehashing everything, so that there's no misunderstanding. And we're trying to be honest while providing some flexibility. There are over 2,000 Catholics in the town. That's why I put over 2,000 people in there. Not all of them are church going, as Mr. McKay pointed out. That's why the mass attendance is only 100 or so per mass.
And not everybody comes at once.
Mm-hmm. Right, I understand.
Registration.
Right, I understand that. You're looking at like 400. You're looking at 400 on a weekend. Is what, roughly.
We're hoping our numbers come up, just like everybody else.
Yeah, of course.
I don't want to be redundant, Mr. Chairman. If you want me to address anything, I'd be happy to do that.
I would just be more comfortable if we voted on having the services there, because that's what I'm understanding, that you were given the approval from the council. And then if you could maybe quantify what you're going to be using the parish hall for specifically, and put your specific timeframes and whatnot, so that we can see that you've thought through everything as well. And then you can also provide us with what your insurance is for that kind of things as well. I would just feel more comfortable
Like
with that.
Mr.
just to
McKay
protect
said,
both.
we're not doing anything different than any other church up and down Long Island.
Are they
We're
here
doing
to
church-
testify that, though? Are they here tonight to testify to that?
I'm testifying for us.
But you're telling me
And
that the
I'm
other
saying
churches are doing
We know
that.
the other churches. We're friends with other ecumenical, denominations, and we know what, we're not trying to put them down or look at them. We're just saying we're trying to just do the best. Like Mr. McKay said, we're just doing the things that church does.
Right, I understand that, but you're saying that the other churches do that, but those churches aren't here to say, yes, we do that. I don't know that for sure.
I will
So-
address that. There are other churches, and even on the other side of town, that do things like that. One on the other side of town actually has a band. I have sung in our church band. There's church bands are becoming popular, but that doesn't mean that you have drums that are bang, bang, bang all through the neighborhood. In our church, we actually have outdoor services. And we've had more people come because they like the outdoor service. So there's some people that don't. They come to another church or another place. The only weddings that I've gone to for church, I think I stated earlier, they're small. It's usually, like I said, it's usually just punch. It's usually one or two have had a dinner, but they bring in, they bought in their own stuff. If you have a kitchen in a church, if you have a kitchen in a hall, if you have a kitchen, the Board of Health doesn't care. If you have a kitchen in a public place, you have to meet certain criteria, period. Even, it looks like it's a commercial kitchen, excuse me, and that includes Smithville.
Sure.
Where I am a docent. And they have to approve certain things so we can have food.
Well, the Board of Health did certify our
Right.
kitchen.
So that's one thing. Number two, a church has functions. You mentioned St. Patrick's Day. You mentioned now the Board of Health doesn't want a lot of food brought in from the outside, like many churches have done in the past. You either have to bring the food in and cook it there, or, you have to have somebody that is licensed to bring it in. That is not totally true if you're doing a funeral. It's not totally true if you're doing a total reception. That's just church oriented. And I think what Mr. McKay said was very correct. You cannot limit a service. If church is a service, church is not a business. Its finances are subject to business, but a church is a service. And as the service needs arise in a community, like COVID, you have to adjust to that. Sometimes that means more services, sometimes that means services online, sometimes it means a combination of both. But like Mr. McKay said, we have gone way off track here. And we're just way off track. We have to pull in, we have to stop and think. Your St. Patrick's Day festival, I'll call it that, is probably attended more. But maybe it's even attended by me, because I was invited by one of your parishioners. Even though I'm not a member, I'm going to go. But they're not going to be bringing in thousands of people. You have a limit as to how many you can see. And with COVID, that's even less.
Mr. Costa, I was facetiously thinking that you should describe the events not as banquets after the weddings, but as teas, and agree to a condition that no alcoholic beverages, save for wine at the service, will be allowed in the church. And perhaps that will satisfy those who will question your motives here.
I'm tempted to do that too, but there's something known as responsible drinking. And if ever there were a place for responsible drinking, I would think it would be in a church and supervised by these fellows behind me. If the board wanted to put that in the resolution, so be it. I hate to hem the church in when other churches are not hemmed in. It is pretty standard fare to have a glass of wine at a reception, however rare it may be at this facility.
If I could be clear, I do support this application, and I will vote yes on it as it stands. I want to just explain that I do come from a place of legitimacy, and I congratulate you, Deacon Leo, on 25 years there. At 25 years, I was receiving my sacraments with St. Anne's Church. So I'm a fellow Catholic. I understand where you're coming from. Working 20 years in running recreation and senior services alongside of St. Anne's, I've experienced these events and these fundraising opportunities, as well as use of the parish center for not only the events that I directed and coordinated, but also ones that I attended. So, and this might be a new area that the church is going to be encroaching on, because you have a wonderful resource. So, I don't want to be projected as coming from a place of illegitimacy. There's a reason why I am here. I have a hold a position on this seat, as well as our professionals, because we bring a different perspective. I don't hear limitations. I hear just questions, trying to seek understanding and trying to seek definitive answers. That's all. I don't believe that there should be limitations as strict as what is being stated, because that's not a place that I was coming from. I was just simply trying to ask questions and get a better understanding and see if you understand what the future holds for the parish. So I do support this application, but I don't like to be painted in a corner as a place of illegitimacy, because that's not our positions here. I don't feel that that's what we were doing. I think we do support the church. I think we're just simply trying to seek understanding, and we have a right to do that. But, I don't see that we were trying to limit you or place anything on the church that perhaps other churches are going through. I don't know. I don't know what size halls there are. I don't know if they're robust, places as your center, your church is. I don't know the answers to that.
Well,
So-
I'm in St. Anne's, and I know Father Edwin very
Yes.
well when he was there.
Yes.
I know you do that. And I know that you have celebrations there, carnivals there.
Oh, yeah.
You're not having a carnival, but I know you like to have a good time and respectively.
Yep.
And so do we, and we respectively, keep it on, keep everything under control.
And I hear there's alcohol served at Carnival too.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Of course.
I think that we'll all acknowledge the fact that the church has been, is, and will continue to be a superb neighbor. And we don't want anything to discourage that, but like you said, we're just trying to get some clarification on things. I want to move towards a motion, but I have one question of Mr. Kingsbury first. Should anything be in this proposed motion, and everybody will have a chance to vote for or against, but should anything be in the motion relative to the county approval
I
or
will
the fact that they lost
put something
their
in
chance?
the resolution that if the county requires any kind of entrance, exit, or other improvement, they will comply with that. But that's a county issue. But that will be in the resolution.
It should, in ours?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so I will call for a motion.
I'm going to make a motion, but I want to find out what the conditions are that we've all agreed to tonight. I know there were a couple, the county approvals being one, the signage the chairman asked for on the exit sign, that's what I'll call it for short. Correct, Mr. Chairman?
Correct.
The exit sign.
Yes.
And I'm reluctant to put words in your mouth, but we ought to talk about these conditions that members have seem to want to have on this, and it sounds like you're agreeable to that, Mr. Costa.
In the event that we need to have a time limit for wedding receptions, the father did say that he would consent to 10 o'clock as a closing time. All right, and after that cleanup, but closing time 10 o'clock.
All right, and that any functions will adhere to all state and local requirements.
Yes, absolutely. And I just didn't want to limit other functions.
Yeah, that includes noise, whatever the requirements are.
That's correct. State, county, local laws regard to noise levels.
Right. And was there anything else that I missed?
The one was just a clarification that the hall will be primarily used by parishioner and church-related events, but may also be used by 501c3 and other similar community-based civic uses and social service activities.
Well put.
That's fine.
That's a good,
Well put.
good way to,
And we
good way to
did
describe it.
suggest that the board reaffirm the parking variance because there is, I don't want to say an intensification of traffic or parking on site, but there is a different utilization of the site. So we think it's appropriate to reaffirm the parking variance where it was under 19 spaces previously, required 108 are constructed on site. And we had suggested a catch-all that if at any point the county determines that there is a parking issue in the future, the church will coordinate with the township to come up administratively with methods to mitigate any deficiency of parking.
Okay. I don't think Mr. Kingsbury is take shorthand, but I think he got all of that. Doing his best to take shorthand.
And also, Mr. McKay, I think we wanted to reaffirm the ability to construct some kind of side building that was in the original application. We mentioned that as well.
Well, you're not abandoning.
Right.
You're not abandoning that.
Right.
Not abandoned.
Although it may never happen, you're not abandoning.
Correct.
And I do think it's good for the record to reflect that it is not going to be constructed at this time, that the applicant is retaining their rights to that prior approval.
Right.
Won't that have an impact on the parking situation?
I was just going to say
No,
that.
and I specifically did ask that question of either pastor or deacon to make sure that the peak demand on the site would only be the 350 in the sanctuary, that those classrooms, if used, would be used on Monday or Tuesday afternoons, such that the peak utilization of the site would be no more than 350 as identified as the capacity for the sanctuary. And that correlates with our ordinance, which requires 1 per 3 seats, plus 1 per pastor, plus 1 per 2 employees, which was the calculation from that prior site plan. So the 2 would not be used simultaneously, with the exception of the crying room. And most of them are not going to be driving.
I
So I
would
think
think.
we're covered on the parking issues. That's all.
Right, we're reaffirming, I'm sure the ordinance will mention that we're reaffirming
Yes.
the previous
God, I don't know
parking
about all that.
criteria. Are there any other conditions that, because I want to try to make this motion all-inclusive, any other conditions that members of the board want to add to this?
Well, Mr. McKay, you mentioned earlier that the receptions would be alcohol-free.
No, I didn't.
We have the right to legislate.
I didn't include that because well, there's going to be a time limit on the receptions. But, you know, what is a reception? If you have a baptism at church, and I've been to a few, and you go downstairs or you go across the street and there's some cake and tea and coffee and somebody opens a bottle of wine, is that going to be prohibited by this ordinance? I would hope not. You know, to have a condition to prohibit alcohol is totally unreasonable in my mind.
I agree.
You know, and even if we have a reception after a wedding and it's held there, and the people getting married choose to bring some alcohol in for their guests, the church is not serving alcohol in that context. And I wouldn't want to prohibit that from happening.
My point is that I really would like to see that in your resolution.
Agreed.
I agree.
That's all.
So because I'm not quite sure, you don't want a prohibition on it.
They can do what they want. Whether or not alcohol can be served at these receptions.
Yeah, well, my resolution is silent on that, so it doesn't.
Not all churches
It
do
doesn't.
that.
But that's their choice. It's not a
You
law.
can't lump all.
My resolution is silent on that, so that it doesn't enforce any rule on that at all. It's left to common sense. And that's the way I think it's best left here. Now, if somebody wants to fashion some resolution on alcohol, to go, a condition on alcohol, you know, say so, we'll talk about it, but
I think the bride and groom should be able to have a toast.
yeah, of course. Somebody breaks open a bottle of champagne, is that suddenly against
Well,
the
you'd
ordinance?
have to make a condition on any event. You can't just say you can't have alcohol at a wedding. You'd have to say no alcohol at all on the premises. And that,
Sure.
that's,
Sure,
that
and no
is not
wine.
something, I think that's reasonable.
churches don't restrict it.
No,
No,
they don't restrict. The church can restrict, but that's a church,
Yeah.
that's a church
Other churches
restriction.
don't, but they do.
They do,
You can't.
but that's
you cannot lump
that's
every
based on their
church into
religious
that.
belief, not by
Yes.
All right, well, Mr.
statute of
Mr.
law.
Costa, I'm going to make my motion.
Go ahead.
I'm going to make my motion. I've given you the list, which I'm sure Mr. Kingsbury's gotten down, of conditions that go with the motion. I'm going to move to grant the D1 variance for the reasons given by Mr. Miller and for the excellent reasons given by Mr. Costa in his brief attached to the application. That's my motion.
Second.
I'm almost reluctant to say, are there any questions on the motion?
Are you allowed to vote with exception?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Tricocci?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
Mrs. Tyndale?
I vote yes on everything except for allowing alcohol at events for safety purposes.
Ms. Cosco?
Yes.
Mr. Krollpfeifer?
Yes.
Is the fire
And
allowed to serve?
by the way, we incorporated in the motion,
I don't.
no left turn on Lumberton signs and, okay.
Right, those are all in my motion.
Good, okay. The motion obviously carries.
Thank you, Mr. Krollpfeifer. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Most of them only
Thank
have
you.
right?
Thank you, Paul.
I think we've all done the right thing, and I appreciate it from each one of you.
Thank you. Okay, moving forward, we have the minutes of the April 7th meeting. Need a motion?
Something happens?
Okay.
You guys want somebody to
It's a risk everybody else has.
You're right. I mean,
Regardless, it's done.
Yeah, but our parish center, they have reviewed, people bring their.
Excuse me, folks. Folks, we still have to have a meeting here.
This is what happens when everyone leaves, we still have stuff to do.
Okay, Mrs. Kelly made a motion that we accept the minutes, is that correct?
Accept and file the minutes of April 7th.
I forgot.
Second.
Second.
I'm sorry, I heard Mrs. Kelly who
Mrs. Kelly
seconded
made the
that.
motion, Mr. McKay seconded.
Thank
Any
you.
questions on the motion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr.
Oh.
McKay?
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Should we get Bruce and
Uh,
Mayor and
Yeah, let me get her.
they're still here?
Oh,
I'm sure she heard.
Do you want me to go?
Yeah, she will.
Oh, really?
Say, I would be slower getting her.
Are they still
I
here?
couldn't even, my name,
I'm fine.
her name was drawing a blank.
Is she still here?
I don't know if she left. Oh, Bruce is still.
Oh, Bruce is still here.
They are, they're still.
Flashlights, it was,
Did Bruce? Oh, no, he did.
Oh, it was a fire, I thought it was a fire truck.
He's probably thinking,
Mrs. Kelly?
I saw him drive by and it looked a lot.
Yeah, because I can't go by this way.
Thought it would be rude to leave Leela there by herself.
I'm sure she would have. Did she
Let's go back to the minutes of the April 7th meeting. I need a motion and a second.
well, we have the motion from Mrs. Kelly,
Well, I just wanted to
second by
do it. Yeah.
by Mr.
We have a
McKay.
motion by Mrs. Kelly, a second by Mr. McKay, and now we're at roll call.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
yes.
Mr. Krollpfeifer?
Yes.
Mr. Bradley?
Yes.
And Mr. Murphy?
Okay. Resolutions, the first one, and this is not to be confused with Mr. Palente was here for another one. Resolution 2021-9, bulk variance permit. Need a motion and a second.
Which one is that?
Move to adopt the resolution as written.
Second.
Okay. Mr. McKay and Mrs. Gilmore. Any questions on the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
Mr. Bradley?
Yes.
And Mr. Krollpfeifer?
Yes. Resolution 2021-10, bulk variance minor subdivision. Need a motion and a second.
Move to adopt as, move to approve as drafted.
I'll second it. Any questions on the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mr. Krollpfeifer?
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
And Mr. Bradley?
Yes. Okay, correspondence, we have 3 items of correspondence. We need a motion and a second that the correspondence be filed, accepted and filed.
I make a motion that we approve and file correspondence.
I'll second.
Any questions on the motion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Tyndall?
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mr. Tricoci?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes. The
Mrs.
reserve.
Casco?
Yes.
And Mr. Krollpfeifer?
Yes. Professional comments.
It's called.
Mrs. Burkham?
Apparently I've said too much this evening.
No, you didn't.
No, you
say too
didn't.
much. No. That's why I'm giving you another shot.
No, I'll keep it quiet. Paul is falling asleep over here.
Okay. Mr. Taylor? Mr. Miller? Mr. Kingsbury?
No comments.
Okay. Board comments.
Yes, I have a comment. I want to thank the township in particular for the planting of the tree out front in recognition of first responders and people that have passed on from the COVID-19, that we had a ceremony this past Saturday that recognized not only the police, but also the firemen and EMTs. And it was a very nice ceremony, and I hope you're willing to take a look at that and think about coming out on June the 9th, the 6th, or at least for Wellness
The fifth.
Day or...
Fifth.
5th.
You're here.
Okay. Any other board comments? Public comments? Oh, man. Yeah. Yeah.
There's still people online, too.
You don't have to be sworn in.
Okay. I just wanted to say, I don't believe I'm not into liquor or any of that. I agree with you, Jill. But I've been to places where they just have wine only. Any certain baptisms or whatever, that's all they have. And I understand what Jill's saying, I really do. I just think that they should know the consequences of what could happen if something goes wrong. So I think they're going to rethink.
They have liability.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other public comment? If not, I will close the public comment. We need
There's still 3 people online, but they stayed muted the whole time.
okay. Close public comment. Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Done.